Making Mistakes is a Very Good Thing with Benjy Smith, episode 87. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Profit with Law. I am your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm here with another great guest interview. My guest today is Benjy Smith. Benjy Smith is one of the founders of Smith and Benowitz. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, Benjy Smith is an attorney, entrepreneur, and a podcast host. Over the past few years, he has had a total mindset shift in many aspects of his life. He figured out how to not be a miserable lawyer and wants to let you know it is possible too. Now, that's the official bio. I will tell you that I learned about Benjy from my friend Sam Malai, who was a guest on an earlier episode all about getting massive Google reviews for your law firm. Definitely go check that out. I need to look up what episode number it is, but we'll link it up in the show notes. Anyway, so Benjy has a podcast called LawFlip podcast, and it's intended for business owners, entrepreneurs. It's a really interesting show. Benjy, as you're going to see in this interview, likes to make things fun. He likes to make things interesting. And so I definitely think that you should check it out, see if it's something that appeals to you. Maybe you become a subscriber of their show. Speaking of subscribers, if you are listening to the Profit with Law podcast and enjoying it and have not yet subscribed, you want to make sure you hit that subscribe button so that we show up in your podcast player every time we release a new episode. And once we're on that note, we need ratings and reviews. We need people to show us some love, but not because we need a pat on the back, but because when people come and look at the show and wonder whether they should click the button and take a listen, they're going to look at those ratings and reviews. And if they don't see good ratings and reviews, or they see a very low quantity of them, they might take a pass and they might miss this valuable content. So the little bit that you can do to give back for the work that I'm doing here and the work that we're doing, the team is doing behind the scenes to put this together for you and provide it to you week in, week out, little bit that you can do is to give us a rating and review. And I'm not even asking for a 5-star review. I would be loving it and appreciative if that's what you do, but give us an honest rating and review. Let us know how you really feel. And we would love if you put that out there for everybody to see. Now, what I really enjoyed about this conversation, as you're going to see when we go through this interview, is Benjy he's just an ordinary guy. But he's an ordinary guy with his head screwed on straight, right? And what I mean by that is he recognizes that he's going to make mistakes. He recognizes that he doesn't know all the answers, but he moves forward anyway. And I find time and time again that the people who are successful are the ones who take action, the ones who simply just go and do it, and then look back later and say, okay, was that good? Was that bad? Do I need to tweak? Do I need to change? Do I need to abort? But if you try to have the answers before you start, what ends up happening is you sit in indecision and you never move forward. You never take that next step. And that's what's required for you to be successful. So definitely, this is an interview that you don't want to miss. It's a great conversation. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's a fellow law firm owner. It's not a vendor. It's not somebody who, is speaking at one of my events. This is simply another law firm owner who I'm gonna share with you something that you're gonna learn later, and that is his firm is killing it. and he's in business for a year and a half. So if you've been doing this for any period of time and you're struggling, you'll want to pay attention to what Benjy has to share. Going back to Sam Malai, so that was episode 49, getting over 1,000 Google reviews with Sam Malai. Check that episode out. But anyway, that's how I found Benjy, and this is a great interview. So plug your headphones in and get on that treadmill or that bike or whatever it is that you're doing. Hop in the shower and take a listen to this interview, and then come back and tell me, hey, did you love it? More interviews like this. What did you think of what we shared? Give me some feedback. I'd appreciate it. So everything you need is in the show notes below in the episode or on profitwithlaw.com/087. profitwithlaw.com/087. Here you go. Benjy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure here, and I appreciate your time and generosity to be here with us today. Benjy, I like to start off getting to know our guests, so we'll start with a really easy one, and that is to just give us a little bit of your story, how you got into law, how you started your law firm, and what that growth looked like, and what's your law firm doing today?
Sure. So obviously, the big focus right now is the coronavirus and everything that's going on. But to take you back, I was born and raised in Southern California in Los Angeles. My father, Mark, is an attorney. And since I was a young kid, I was reading depositions. And it was kind of a foregone conclusion that I was going to be an attorney, whether I liked it or not. And there's been times where I've liked it. There's been times where I haven't liked it. And ultimately, I went to college at the University of Arizona, had a little bit of fun, transferred over to USC in Southern California, and then I went to law school at Loyola Law School, which is a really great law school here in Los Angeles. And then I wanted to move to New York because I had a lot of friends that lived in New York, and my family's from New York originally. And so I did 1 year at Brooklyn Law School, had a great time there, took the bar in New York, and then I worked at a internet marketing company. We did sort of brand deals. We did things like teeth whitening products for the Kardashians and stuff like that. So I was kind of like in-house lawyer / business development. And then I decided to move back to California, take the bar, and I've been practicing in California for about 12 years now. So in the first 10 or so years, I was really practicing as a traditional lawyer, doing a combination of mostly litigation and some transactional work. And I wanted something a little bit different. I worked with my family. I worked with my father and my brother, and we had a great firm, and the firm still exists. It's called Crane & Smith. But I decided I wanted to do something on my own. And so I did that. In December 2018, I started getting motivated to start my own thing. And ultimately, I had a meeting with my now partner. Then he was just my good friend that we went to law school together at Loyola. And so we started a firm, Smith and Benowitz, and we represent employees and injury victims.
Okay. So you do employee work and injury work. Now, is that PI? Is that personal injury work? Okay. And you started in December of 2018. So your law firm is what, a year and a half old, or?
Yeah, we're about like 16 months old. It really started beginning of January, but we met in December 2018 to discuss it and really quickly just put it together.
And what does your firm look like today as far as dynamic of personnel, maybe the mix of work between employee and personal injury?
Yeah. So we are, so my partner Lewis and I, we're the partners. We have an associate, Michelle, who went to Loyola Law School as well. And then we have a few case managers / like legal assistants who do a ton of client interaction and work to push cases forward, whether it's employment or personal injury. And then as it relates to like the practice areas, we we represent employees, and we do personal injury. And a lot of people think, oh, you must do injuries in the workplace, so you do what's called work comp. But we actually don't do work comp. So we represent employees when they're discriminated against, when they're harassed, when they are not paid properly in accordance with the law, overtime law, rest periods, meal periods, things like that. And then we also do class actions that arise out of employment cases. So when there's a large amount of employees that are being that are having their rights violated, we represent large class actions against employers who are violating a large amount of employees' rights. And then separate and apart from that, we represent injury victims who are in car accidents and slip and falls and any other type of injuries. And right now, during this crisis, it was a good thing that we've been sort of technology driven, because we use FileVine as a case management tool. We use Slack as a communication tool. We use RingCentral, which is a cloud phone platform, and we use G Suite. And so, with a combination of those things, with all of the faults with all the challenges with those different technologies, we were able to relatively seamlessly move to all be working from home right now. And it's pretty incredible. It's been super challenging. This is the toughest thing that I've ever had to deal with, not only as a business owner, but just in business in general. It's just the carnage that has taken place is just devastating. And so we're doing everything we can possible to bring our cases forward, to represent our clients. And, the court systems are basically closed. Mediations are very difficult to get into because, for obvious reasons. And so even though we don't really want to be doing this, we're basically taking our best option to get into mediations by Zoom. And what a time for Zoom, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I would have saw it coming, right?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Could have had my money there. So it sounds to me like you've had some really significant growth in the year and a half not even year and a half of your firm's existence. And there's a lot of people who are listening to this podcast that are struggling with that. Now, they may not be in the early stages, but even going past, hiring, making their first hire. You've got besides for your partner, you have 3 staff members on your team as well. The fact that you're carrying that payroll, we just know that you've got to have a certain level of business coming in. You're also talking about some pretty significant and sized and hefty cases, which, typically a very small law firm might not even think about taking. So I know there's a bunch of points in there which could be separate questions, but the question that I have for you is, what do you attribute your success to? I'm going to call it success, right? What do you attribute your success to being able to just hit the ground running and get things going and get the cases coming in? What was your secret sauce, do you think?
Well, let's first be extremely candid. It has not been all incredible success. There's been ups, there's been downs, there's good, bad, ugly, and it would be disingenuous to say anything otherwise. I think that for whatever success we've had, it's been a combination of experience. Law is not a game where you can just walk into out of law school and be ready to go. It just isn't. It's a combination of experience. It's a combination of building up resources over a period of time and feeling more comfortable to take on risk. It's hard work. It's taking calculated risk. It's being able to make quick decisions and being okay with being wrong. It's doing a better job as you're interviewing people, trying to get the type of people that have integrity and that you can count on in a time like this, for instance, where they are now having to work from home and you basically have to give them even more trust than you would in normal circumstances. in terms of generating leads and generating business, it's about putting your butt out there. And, I was always a social person growing up, always knew tons of people, but that actually doesn't get the job done. So you could know as many people as you want. I went to camps, I went to school, I went to different schools, I took 2 bars. I know tons of people. That itself does not get you the business. So in terms of getting business, I do so many different things, right? I'm talking to you. I'm talking to many. I'm in a networking group where I funnel tons of leads. I got like ranked like rookie of the year and MVP last year in my networking group because I sent the most business to other people. So I think in the old days when somebody would say like, oh, I'm looking for some help with a gardener, or I'm looking for an accountant, I'm looking for anything, I would hear it and maybe just say, oh yeah, maybe I know somebody. But now like my ears are perked up. When I hear somebody has some sort of need, I really, from just inside of me innately at this point, I want to help that person, and I also want to provide value to somebody else. And so I really make it a focus to provide value to other people, and that in itself has driven a ton of business. I do my podcast. It's called LawFlip. That's kind of one of the ways that we connected, because I had Sam Malai on our podcast as our first guest, and I took a lot from him. A lot of the growth that I've had has been me being open to learning new things from either books, from reading, from talking to people like you, from talking. If you are in this cycle where you talk to the same people all the time, like I was for a very long time, for probably 10 years, I had ambition. I wanted to do bigger things. I had these great visions. But when you talk to the same people all the time and you talk to yourself all the time, because a lot of the discussions you're having is with yourself, there's only so much that you can grow. There's only so much that you can grow as a person, as a professional. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that with the bottom of my heart. So this growth, I don't claim to be, we don't claim to be the most successful firm in the world, but what we do claim is that we're constantly trying to evolve and become better people and better lawyers and better help our clients. And so I think there's no magic bullet, but I think it's constantly trying your best to get better and to learn more and know that you don't know what you're talking about. I love that, or that you don't know what you don't know. And so when with the podcast, for instance, I genuinely want to learn more from other people. So I have people on that inspire me to hopefully inspire other people. And so in terms of the scalability, I'm giving you a long answer to, it wasn't the shortest question, but I think the key for us and whatever success we've had has been trying things that we've never tried before. So for instance, we've done Facebook ads and we had no idea whether they're going to work. They were pretty successful. We've done other types of leads and they've completely failed. We've done certain types of marketing. It's worked. We've done other types of marketing, failed. But some of the ones that have done well have done so well that it really didn't matter on the ones that didn't work. One of the challenges that our business has is we don't realize the gain for quite some time. So a lot of people that advertise, they're able to literally spend the marketing dollars and then that day determine whether they were able to make money from that transaction. So I spent $5,000 on Facebook ads. I got $40,000 in sales. That doesn't happen with my line of business because we're essentially commission based. We work on a contingency. We work entirely 100% on a contingency. So that means that unless we get our clients paid, we don't get paid. It's a super risky business, but it's somewhat calculated because that's our entire business model. So when it comes to advertising, or marketing, you're just doing your best to get in the best quality business and then bust your butt to get the job done with those cases.
Wow. Yeah. I tell people all the time, action creates clarity. One of the things that holds people back is just sitting in indecision. And it sounds like you're just not afraid to try things and just see what works. And really, that's That's the key is to you learn from everything you do. Some of it works and you learn that it works and you double down on it, and some of it doesn't work and you learn it doesn't work and you move on and try the next thing. So I love that. I also like, I mean, there's a lot of things that you said in there, and I'm not going to even remember all of them to go back to ask about them. But one thing that you said is that you've been willing to take risk. You've been willing to take calculated risk. How do you assess the level of risk and determine when something is, a good risk to take versus a bad risk to take? Is there an approach that you use to arrive at that?
Well, let's just start with like the general idea of risk. So I heard this great speech by Maverick Carter, who's LeBron James' longtime, sort of partner slash manager. He gave a speech at USC where he talked about how, risk isn't exactly what you think. So sometimes the riskiest thing is not taking the so-called risk. So for instance, like what I was doing, working as a traditional lawyer, some might consider that to be the most stable thing, and that starting my own firm was super risky. That, like, a lot of people view that as a super risky move. And I viewed it as a relatively risky move. But in hindsight, and even at the time, I think I realized that the more risky move was just staying and doing something that I didn't really want to be doing. And it's nothing bad about what was going on at my prior firm. It's a great firm. It's just, for me, I felt I needed to do something different. And so I think you have to start thinking about like what it really means to be risky, because if I stayed doing that, I think that probably was more risky, to keep doing something in a way that I didn't want to be doing it. And so I have felt so liberated by doing something and being the sort of master of my own destiny that I view it less and less as a risk. So in terms of calculated risk versus risk, I think there's that first calculation that we all have to make. Like, is this really risky, or is the thing that I'm considering stable not really as stable as it is? Then when it comes to business decisions, I think that you have to take shots. You come up with ideas, and if you have paralysis analysis, you have no shot. I think you have to know the numbers. You have to look at the numbers, but at the end of the day, you're taking a risk. When we do marketing, when we have no idea if that's going to result in leads, we are doing everything possible to get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible. We're doing everything possible to make sure that our content is clear, concise, but we have no idea the audience, whether they're going to take to it or not. We try it, it works, we pour more money into it. It doesn't work, we pour less money into it. It kind of becomes simple after a while in terms of risk, and so when you take risks, you need to be more thoughtful about the whole dynamic of the company. And like, for instance, for us right now, we're super busy. We don't really, at this moment in time, particularly during this crisis, we're so busy, it almost makes sense for us to slow down for a second and just focus on the stuff that we have going on. And you have to be able to make those adjustments. And look, it's a tough time. Cash flow is brutal right now. I don't care how successful you are. The biggest companies in the world are going under right now. So for us, it's looking at the situation and saying, cash flow is brutal. We're in a contingency fee based business. We need to slow down and optimize things to the best of our ability with the cases that we have in hand, and work on them to the best of our abilities and move these cases forward. And so I think a big component of this thing is being realistic and understanding that sometimes you have enough business. You don't need to be spending right now. And so I think that's where we're at right now. Right now, we're trying to make the most of our current situation and yeah.
Yeah, but in a contingency firm, you have various stages of where things are at. If you shut off the faucet at the beginning of the pipeline, then you'll be good as the current caseloads come to a close. But are you concerned about the fact that you're not going to have the next one lined up behind it because you shut off that faucet?
I guess I'm never turning off the faucet. I'm on this show right now, right? So I'm constantly working on generating new business. And I have so many different ways that I do that. So I guess what I'm saying is right now, you have to go into a relatively more conservative approach in terms of spending. So how much money you're spending on ads, how much money you're spending on different things. You have to do things the old-fashioned way and be more organic, do more social media posting, do more outreach, and less out-of-pocket sort of marketing. That's what I'm talking. I'm not saying that we're not taking on new clients. We certainly are. But I think that all of the work that we've done over the last 16 months has generated a lot of interest and eyeballs on what we're doing. And so I think we're reaping some of the benefits of that. And we're able to turn on one or two of the many faucets that we have going on right now.
Right. Got it. And that's, I think that's something that folks that we can learn from and see what something that Benjy's doing really, really smartly and whether it was strategic or not. The fact that he's got so many different avenues that he's working on with the marketing, that he can turn off the one that's costing cash and still have the other efforts that are continuing to reap benefits, but B, to even be something that he can continue working on. Like right now, it's sweat equity, it's spending time on this podcast and things like that, maybe reaching out to people and talking to them, where he's replacing that effort with the cash spend that he would have been doing perhaps on Facebook, but he's, just to conserve cash, he's turned that off. That's what I understood, right?
Yeah, and one more, I'm, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I'm doing everything possible to help people. And I also don't think it's unreasonable or takes away from those, good deeds or whatever you want to call them by asking people, hey, since I just gave you a bunch of free advice, do you mind giving us a Google review? Right? So that's not going to move the needle by any crazy margin, but you got to be scrappy and you got to think of ways. What are some things that we can do where we can get a Google review instead of charging somebody money to give them some advice? Let's get a Google review. So it's just thinking outside the box and thinking about ways you can provide value to other people and maybe get some value from them without asking too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it sounds like you've done everything right? One thing that I noticed is that you have. Sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
No, we've made tons of mistakes, and you just have to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Which I think is part of doing everything right? The fact that you've made mistakes is part of doing things right. And I think that's the whole point, is that you take the action, even if it's the wrong action, even if you get the result that you don't want, that in itself is a positive result because you found out that was the wrong thing, right? Like you said, if you're not taking the shot, you're certainly not going to get the opportunity. So I think that's really important for people to hear over and over again, because staying in indecision and not doing something is the ultimate success path to failure, right?
For sure.
I did notice that you got together with a buddy, you created a partnership. Why did you think it was necessary to have a partner? What was the basis for that, and how is it working with somebody? And do you have, I know it's a public forum, you can answer this in whichever way, but do you have any regrets that you did that? Are you really happy that you did that? And what was the benefits of doing that?
Okay, so it's a great question. So just in my it's a case by case thing, right? So in my specific example, there's ups, there's downs, there's challenges. The bottom line is, on a foundational basis, I trust Lou as much as anybody in the world. So when I was taking the bar exam in New York, and the results came out, my the bar website basically shut down, and it was coming on, it was coming off, and I basically couldn't find out whether I passed the bar or not. It was driving me insane for 4 or 5 hours, and there was only one person that I sent my social security number to and my information to check to see if I passed, if he could get into the website, and it was Lewis. And that's how much I trust Lewis. And so, and I ultimately passed, and he sent me an email saying congratulations, and with the, he actually was able to get to it and not me. And so that's the type of trust that I have in him in terms of like loyalty and reliability. And I just like him. He's a brilliant guy. He's an Ivy League educated guy. He's got published decisions. He's a brilliant guy, and he's a compassionate guy, and he's a fighter for the underdog. And for me, those qualities are the qualities that are necessary for a partnership. Are there tons of challenges when you're trying to bring together two people who have operated their entire life before the partnership in a certain way, and you're trying to bring those two things together? Absolutely. And those are things that are a struggle, but we continue to work through them. And so far, it's been a successful partnership. Again, don't want to pretend like it's all perfect. There are tons of challenges. And if you're not constantly working on those things, it'll just be like any other relationship that works on a default, which is it's going to fail. If you don't constantly work on it, it's going to fail. And so we try to work on it. I mean, we're like, if it requires getting executive coaches involved, we'll do that. I'm not somebody who's going to let anything get in the way of success and also operating in a way that is meaningful and enjoyable. Otherwise, it just becomes a job, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. And so the bottom line is I'm very happy that I partner with Lewis. He's a good guy, and I trust him. And I think those are the things that you need to most value in somebody. You can't, when you have a relationship with somebody, you cannot like look at their faults or their shortcomings and make the entire relationship about that, because they're more than that. It's not in a vacuum. They are a whole person, and I have my own insanity that he has to deal with. But I think as long as the other person acknowledges where they're coming up short and gives you the impression that they're willing to try to work on those things, I think that's all you could sort of ask for. And you have to constantly reevaluate it, though. That doesn't mean that if you're in a bad relationship that you shouldn't consider your other options. But I think if you came together, you probably did it for a reason, and you should give it a full shot.
Yeah. Now, I've had a guest on the podcast. I think it was on the podcast, certainly on the Law Firm Growth Summit back in December, Seth Price, who, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He also owns a marketing company, Blue Shark Digital. But he has a law firm that he built with his partner and 40-something employees that they have. And we had a whole conversation about his growth. And he said that although he has his law degree and when they formed their partnership, he loved and enjoyed the marketing, and his partner was a great lawyer, and they partnered together where his partner was basically handling the substantive part of law, and he was handling the growth of the business and handling the business side of the operation. What kind of split in responsibilities do you and your partner have, and is it that kind of makeup as well?
It's a great question. I think that we certainly have different things that we like to do. I think at this time we could do a little bit better job of divvying up the roles and responsibilities. But I would say that I am obsessed with negotiating. I love negotiating, and I've always have been, and it's very comfortable for me. And Lewis is too. But when it comes to just, okay, there's only so much time, to me, I will take that all day. I don't care. Put me in the middle of a negotiation. I don't care if I don't know anything about the case or anything. I know how to weave my way through that thing. Lewis is an incredible legal mind. So again, he's got published decisions. He's literally changed law for employees throughout California. He's written amicus briefs on behalf of the employment organization named SELA, and the California Supreme Court has adopted like most of his language in certain briefs. And so when it comes to the top level legal reasoning and thinking, I think he's going to be more on the sort of front lines of that. But, we're a small firm. We don't have the luxury of saying, Benjy only does this and Lewis only does this. But as soon as I say that, I start reconsidering and thinking, well, sometimes people say they don't have to do something, they don't have time to do something, and then the response to that is, well, you don't have time not to do it. So even as I'm sitting here talking to you, I realize that there's tons of room for improvement, and there should be more of a clearly defined roles and responsibilities. But just candidly, you're just doing everything you possibly can, and so we have room to grow there. We have room to grow in terms of who does what. But naturally, Lewis is better at running payroll. He's done employment for his entire career. So for whatever reason, he knows every single detail of how you're supposed to do that legally, and he gets it done promptly. I personally am happy not to be doing that. So there's just things that naturally sort of happen over the course of time that we have sort of our roles and responsibilities have sort of come together, but I still think there's more room to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would argue that payroll should be outsourced to a payroll provider, and neither of you should be wasting your time with it.
No. Let me clarify. We 100% have our payroll outsourced, but he is a perfectionist when it comes to making sure that payroll companies are not experts at employment law. And we've had tons of companies that we've brought lawsuits against that use payroll companies that are screwing it up every which way. So he's never going to rely entirely on the payroll company to have people submit hours to a payroll. Even though we pay a payroll company, he oversees it and makes sure that different, sick pay, paid time off, overtime, breaks, etc., are all captured in a way that is legal, proper, and so yeah.
Got it. Yes, thank you for clarifying. You were right to interject there and make sure that you clearly explain that, because
if you're doing your own payroll, if you have a company and you have enough business to be hiring a payroll company or to be hiring enough people, you should be using a payroll company. It makes no sense not to.
Right. I would argue that even if you're selecting to be an S corp and you have to put yourself on payroll, you should be hiring a payroll company, because they're going to take care of the forms. They're going and it's. I mean, you can get Gusto is who I use, and for $25 a month or $30 a month, that and then another $5 or $6 per employee, you're covered. And it's one of those things where it's not worth your time.
That's not like a trim. When you're trimming fat on your expenses, that's not a trimming of the fat that you like. There are other subscriptions or other things that you can cut down on. That would not be one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things you mentioned earlier is, hey, if I need to get an executive coach, I'm going to get an executive coach. What are the support mechanisms that you invest in to keep learning and keep moving forward and keep you and your partner on the same page, things like that? And how did you go about finding or selecting the right ones for you?
Okay, so I don't claim to have all the answers. I have to make that lawyerly disclaimer every time I talk. No, I just like to make clear that I don't come from a place where I feel like I have all the answers, but I certainly am giving it my best shot. So when it comes,
and I'll interrupt for a moment and just tell you that I'm not looking for the right answer. I'm just asking about your experience so that you can share that with the audience. The audience understands that this is just what you went through. They're not they're not necessarily looking to you as the go-to expert on this matter.
Fair. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. I guess I just like to make sure that people know that I'm coming from a humble place and not pretending like I know all of what I need to know. So one of the things that I've done is, like I talked about earlier, learning new things from new people, audiobooks. For me, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was like a game changer for me. Just the way that I looked at things. For me, it's listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, having new guests on my podcast, and honestly, having the podcast has given me a platform to have an excuse to ask people that I respect and admire to come and talk to me that probably wouldn't otherwise make sense to have those conversations. And I use those opportunities as legitimate opportunities to learn from them. I always, as tough as litigation is, one of the things I always loved about litigation was taking depositions, because I'm a sponge for information. I always liked learning. If I was taking, the deposition of a bank manager, I wanted to learn everything about even if it had nothing to do with the case. I just wanted to know like everything about what a bank manager does. And so I think it's really being open to the possibility of learning more. And so for me, I have a friend, Pavel, who came from modest means in Mexico, and he has just done everything possible to better himself. He's taken classes at Harvard. He's taken classes online. He is now a global lead for IBM. And with his own, IBM does their own training. They sent his entire team to Harvard for an entire thing. But with his own money, out of his own pocket, he spends tons of money on investing in himself. And so I've looked at people like Pavel and other people to say, you know what? It's okay to spend $500 on this course, $1,000 on this course. Or right now, I'm looking into working with an executive coach, because whatever that costs, it may not work out. It may not have a net benefit, but what do I have to lose? I have to lose some money. That's okay. We take risks, and we're just going to have to live with that. And so I think it's just like what we talked about earlier. It's trying new things. It's most of the people that I know in my life, and it's just sad to say, are complacent and they're not willing to try new things. And I used to look at people who talked about like Tony Robbins and all these like self-help gurus with such disdain. You know why I knew those people? Because I was one of them. I used to think like that is bullshit. I don't need Tony Robbins to tell me what to do. And candidly, I'm not like a huge Tony Robbins fan, but I appreciate anybody that's trying to bring positive messages to the universe. Whether you think it's financially motivated or not, unless you're really taking advantage of people, I think that positive messages are a good thing to look to. So if you're on Instagram, if you're on social media and you have miserable people on there that are, putting out negativity, unfollow them. Replace those people with positive people, and then even better, make your own content that you think can inspire other people. But I think the main thing is getting out of these habit loops. You don't even realize you're in the habit loop until you get out of the habit loop. And you just have to try different things and learn and just learn from other people. And so I think the best way to get out and learn more and educate yourself more is to talk to people that you respect and admire and give that a shot.
Awesome. Love that. I fully agree, and I invest in myself all the time. I'm an avid reader. I listen to Audible books. I'm crazy about podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for well over 10 years now. When I started listening to podcasts, you had to download it on your computer and sync it to your iPod in order to listen to it. So,
wow. You were before your time.
It was interesting for sure. My kids, my oldest daughter is 20,
wow.
18, 17. Those are my older kids. And they remember me listening. I mean, at the time I listened to Dave Ramsey, I listened to Michael Hyatt. There's some of the names that were early adopters, and Pat Flynn on, in the podcast world. And they know those people because they were listening to that in the car.
Yeah.
When we were driving around when they were younger. So Very,
That's great.
yeah. And podcasting is an interesting medium because you can put it in your ears. You can listen to it practically any time. I, I mean, I share openly here. I listen to it in the shower. I have a waterproof Bluetooth speaker. Um, my wife can't stand when I have it on 1.5x speed. When I play it out loud in the house, I got to slow it down, which drives me nuts. But I listen to it, in the shower, when I'm cooking in the kitchen, when I'm, if I'm folding laundry, if any of those activities, I'll stick earbuds in my ears and I'll listen to a podcast. I'm constantly consuming. Um, and I think that we can never get enough. There's so much information out there, and you can always glean something from somewhere. So I love that's where you're at, and I think that what I'm trying to do here with this interview is help our listeners with modeling. Like, here, you might not think that you're that successful, but I can tell you that I know that there's a lot of people who are earlier in their journey than you, and they might be struggling. And so, therefore, when they look to you, you're a success to them, and they're looking up to you. And what I want to point out is, look at what Benjy is doing. Benjy is listening to podcasts. He's listening to Audible. He's reading books. He's created a podcast to interview other people to get them on his show. Guess what? Guess why I started my show? I started my show so that I can get to know the influencers in the legal space. That's why I started my show. Now, ultimately, it turned into a great resource for the industry, and it's taken a life of its own, and I love it, and I love everything that's coming out of it. But the Law Firm Growth Summit, which I ran in December, the first really successful online virtual summit for practice management and business development in the law space industry, right before coronavirus. So now everybody is running their things virtual, but that summit, which had 31 speakers on it, lasted 5 days, would never have been possible if not for the podcast that I created before that. So all of these things, they feed on each other, and it's all a matter of just putting a stake in the ground and saying, I'm done watching and thinking and planning and worrying about whether something's going to work, and I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to put myself out there. I'm just going to do it. So I love that. I mean, that's what you're modeling. You started in December of 2018. We're now March of 2020, and you have staff, you have clients, you're working cases through, you're able to turn some of the spend off, and you're able to still continue your marketing efforts in another area. These are all things that we can learn from. And people who are earlier in your journey, or even people who are further in the journey, we all have gaps, and we're able to learn from each other. And I appreciate you sharing all of that with us. I want to wrap up in the last few minutes that we have together. I'm going to do something I've never done before, but because you're a consumer of knowledge, I want to play a game with you. So we're gonna name that book.
I'm not. I'm gonna be upfront. I am not a voracious book reader. This is a relatively new thing.
No problem. Play along with me. All right.
I'll play along with you.
Best book on business finances that you've read?
For me, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's one of. It's not like I've read so many, but it's the book that really helped change my mind. I don't know if it should have changed the mind as much as my mind as much as it did, but it did.
Yeah, it doesn't matter why it did it. It's just it infused new ideas that really open your mind to new possibilities, and that's what we're looking for. For me, it's Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. So I'm going to reread Rich Dad, Poor Dad for new nuggets, and I'm going to tell you, go read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
I will.
You had mentioned that's one area that you're perhaps needs to do a better job of being in tune with the finances of your company. I promise you're going to love that book. All right, we're going to do 3 of them. Next book, best book on business management and team building.
Best book on business management and team building
that you've read, obviously.
No, I really don't have I don't have a good answer for that. I don't. And that's and
okay. So you're gonna take a pass. I'm gonna give you one. Traction by Gino Wickman.
I think I have it and haven't read it.
Okay, so I'm gonna warn you that it's a dry read, but the EOS system that he introduces in there is going to be a game changer for you if you really pay attention to it. Also, he makes the differentiation that in any partnership, there's always a visionary and an integrator. And you and your partner are going to have to at some point figure out who's who. The visionary is generally the perfect example for it is Walt Disney and his brother. So the two Disney brothers, the other brother, nobody even knows his name, right? Walt Disney's the one that everybody knows, but Walt Disney was the visionary. He actually didn't do any of the work to put Disney into fruition. His brother was the integrator. He was the one that actually made everything happen. And in every partnership, in every business, and even if you don't have a partner, but ultimately at some point you're going to rise into one of those two seats, and you're going to have to hire somebody to fill the other. So.
That's a good, yeah, definitely. So Traction
by Gino Wickman, and let's go with one more, and this is best book for personal life inspiration.
Personal life inspiration. I don't know. For me, the Rich Dad Poor Dad is so meaningful to me. I don't claim to. Again, I'm not a voracious reader, and I want to be. That's an area that I want to grow with. But that's just like the book that had the most impact on me. Period. And as much as your personal life and your professional life are distinct, if you're not happy with your professional life, I find it hard to believe that you could be super happy in your personal life.
Yeah, I agree. I agree so wholeheartedly. But I also think that sometimes there's a disconnect between what I go to work. And I'm at work, and I go home, and I'm at home, and then we have this work-life balance, right? Work-life balance shouldn't exist. It should be part of life. Like there's, the work that you're doing is part of your life. It is something that you love, you enjoy. That's moving the needle forward on what you want to accomplish in this world, and that's why I love this book called Living Forward. That's by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. And Living Forward is all about having a life plan, just like you articulated so well, that you have to have a business plan. You have to actually have a goal in mind and be aiming towards that goal. With your life, you have to have the same thing. And that one of the exercises they do in the book is you write your own eulogy. And,
oh God!
Right. Well, if you think about it, like, what do I want to be known for when I leave? Right? When we're all going to die at some point. When I die, what do I want to be known for? And if you don't have clarity on that, what's going to end up happening is you get there and you have regret because you didn't achieve what you should have wanted to achieve. And doing that exercise up front, going through that and being clear on that is going to help you make sure that you're maintaining the path towards that. So I really love that, and I love the message in that book.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, Benjy, this has been really a lot of fun to do together, and I appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
We went to a bunch of great places. I'm sure that we could talk for another hour if we could. But I am going to be doing daddy daycare. So I told you about my older kids. I also have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. So
you're crazy.
Yes, I'm nuts. With the social distancing, I'm up in the afternoon because I had a busy morning. So what I am going to do is I'm going to ask you if you can share with our listeners where they can get in touch with you, follow up with you. You talked about your podcast. Share your podcast with us. You mentioned that the name of it was LawFlip. Just tell us briefly who it's aimed at, and what it talks about. Anything else that you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I had a good time. I learned a lot from you, and hopefully I gave you some nuggets. You could find me personally at Benjy Smith on Instagram, and all the other social media platforms, LinkedIn, etc. You could email me at benjamin@smithbenowitz.com. We have our brand new website, smithbenowitz.com, SMITHBENOWITZ.com. And then I think for everybody, anybody who's listening to this podcast would love to take a listen of LawFlip. We're on, not only do we have, are we on all the audio platforms, we do full production, sort of studio quality interviews. We've done 15 so far. We've done it with business leaders. We've done it with lawyers. And so we call it LawFlip because I'm a lawyer, and we try to sort of take a different take on how not to be miserable as a lawyer. And so it's for law students, it's for lawyers, it's for really anybody who's trying to improve. Every single episode, I think we give good information to people for how to better their lives, both professionally and personally. We like to have a good time. We like to laugh. And so LawFlip, LAWFLIP. We could be found on any of the platforms, YouTube, Instagram. Facebook, and contact me anytime. Always happy to talk to any entrepreneurs or anybody that has questions about anything. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and happy social distancing.
Yeah. So everybody stay safe. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that we're able to connect virtually. I'd love to come into your office and see your studio at some point, but I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. We'll see whenever that can happen.
Yeah.
I do happen to, so I have my own coach that I work with, and he's out in California. So I am out in California a few times a year. So maybe one time when I'm out there, we can connect. That would be awesome. And folks, another great interview in the books. And Benjy's just been a wealth of information about what he's experienced and what that has meant for him. And therefore, I know that this has been something that could be transformational for you. So don't just think about what you learned, and don't just absorb it and then move on, but figure out something that you can do today that you learned from this podcast and implement it. I'll throw another book at you. It's Atomic Habits. Great book about building habits. If you're on Audible, it's also a great listen, because his story is captivating. But the key to building a habit is to just do it, to start implementing it, and ultimately you're going to make it habitual. When you first were learning how to drive, you couldn't even figure out where the pedal was without, you had to keep looking down to find the pedal before you put your foot on it. And then suddenly you're getting home from a long drive and you can't even remember the drive, right? That's a habit that's built where you've created that muscle memory for yourself, and you want to just take one single action step from today and just implement that and start doing it daily. And 30 days from now, it's going to be habitual for you. Then come back, listen to this episode again. And that's what I've got for you. So
sounds good.
Take care.
You too. Thank you so much.
And we will catch you on the next episode. That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.